Hello, I'm Bob Welch. This is number 0782, the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File program, number 0782. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File program, Dylan Phillips is a Guinness World Record holder. He has the fastest wheelbarrow in the world. How is this even a thing, and how did he know about it?
It was initially built as a fun project. I had no idea about Guinness World Records or land speed records or anything like that when I first started. I went to a builder's merchant, bought myself a wheelbarrow, and I had a scrap scooter and ended up throwing things together and had a quick go on it. Managed to get speeds of about 37 miles an hour, and that's when the question was asked by a couple of friends, was there a Guinness World Record for the world's fastest motorised wheelbarrow? And turns out there was. So that's where we went with it.
Jennifer Lebedev is an educator, YouTube star, and the author of Being a YouTuber, One Creator's Bumpy Road to 1 Million Subscribers. Back in 2007, as a new mom, she didn't want to go back to teaching school, so she began educating on YouTube.
Luckily, YouTube was just taking off around that time, and it was suggested, hey, why don't you post some videos and see what happens? And I did. It was really wonderful because I had no clue about video making or editing, and I just did my best by clicking record, hoping I wouldn't mess up for 10 minutes, and then uploading that video. I was just very grateful that from the get-go, people were receptive to teaching. This is way before COVID, and it was so new, and it was just something done as an experiment, and thankfully it was received very well.
Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com, has a weird story for the month of August. This one deals with hiring a magician at the CIA.
John Mahone was a very famous magician. He was the editor of a very popular magician's magazine called The Sphinx. In 1953, he was approached by Sidney Gottlieb, who was working with the CIA. And Sidney Gottlieb was running a very, very secretive program called MK Ultra. And MK Ultra was the CIA's attempt to figure out how to perform mind control. The reason they wanted to perform mind control was because they were afraid that the Soviets were figuring out mind control. And if the Soviets were going to have mind control powers, the CIA definitely want to have mind control powers.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news, and of course, an idiot of the day. The guest slater, the person who told you this was show number 0782, was Bob Welch, who is a freelance public relations consultant. Before he became a consultant, he spent a very long time in radio. In fact, the radio station he was at in Vermont was the very first station that ever played the Stuff File program. So thank you very much, Bob, for doing that, first of all. And thank you very much for doing the guest slate on this, the Stuff File program, a listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Well, let's get right to the stuff. Fashion house Dolce & Gabbana is going to the dogs. The designer has launched a perfume for dogs called Fifi in honor of Domenico Dolce's poodle. A 3.4-ounce bottle will set you back $108, and the company claims veterinarians approve of the alcohol-free scent. But apparently not all veterinarians. Federico Coccia, a vet in Rome, isn't a fan. He said, "Dogs recognize themselves by smell. They recognize a person by smell. This world of smells should not be changed." He also noted that some diseases are made apparent by their odors, and the perfume could mask those. Dog owner Francesca Castelli agrees. She said, "It seems to be a very exaggerated process of humanization."
Because I'm not just a dog. I'm Fefe. Fefe, the new alcohol-free fragrance mist for dogs. by Dolce & Gabbana.
Well, my question is, considering where dogs sniff each other, where exactly do you apply it? And still with dogs, officers from the Aventura, Florida Police Department were called to the Waterways Dog Park to cool down a dispute between two dog owners. 68-year-old Mordecai Oknin apparently wanted the other owner arrested, but an officer explained that the dispute was a civil matter, not a criminal one. Oknin then told the officer, "Take my dog and fix it," and threw the Pomeranian at the officer, hitting him in the chest. The dog then fell to the ground, apparently injured. Oknin was arrested and booked on charges of felony aggravated battery on a law enforcement officer, animal cruelty with intent to injure or kill, and resisting arrest. He was also banned from the dog park. What? He's not also banned from dogs? His dog was taken for treatment, said one witness. "Nothing shocks me anymore, but from what everyone says at the park, he was very overly protective of his dog." Yeah, he was, right up until he tried to kill it. According to the Polk County Sheriff's Office, an alleged shoplifter at a Walmart store in Lakeland, Florida, absconded with several items, including jewelry and handheld game systems, that was worth about $167. Deputies pursued the suspect as he attempted his getaway on a stolen electric Walmart scooter. 35-year-old Troyson Raymond hit speeds of about 2 miles per hour on the scooter before deputies caught up to him in front of a Dunkin' Donuts. Raymond was booked into jail pending a $13,500 bond, charged with petty theft, a felony due to Raymond having multiple prior convictions, felony grand theft of the $1,325 cart, and unlawful possession of a shopping cart. Yes, the police department added, we avoided the temptation to charge fleeing to elude. Yeah, I guess at 2 miles an hour, that wouldn't make any sense. The police department illustrated their online post with a highly detailed cartoon, including a snail, turtle, a sloth trailing the cart while deputies stopped at Dunkin's for donuts. So, I'm guessing that it was a slow day all around for the department. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, a Kansas man who pleaded guilty to stealing a Jackie Robinson statue from a Wichita Youth Baseball League earlier this year was sentenced last week to 15 years in prison for multiple cases. 45-year-old Ricky Alderet pleaded guilty to theft related to the January disappearance of the statue and other charges. The prosecutor's office had said Alderet would be forced to pay $41,500 to League 42, the youth baseball organization named after the Brooklyn Dodgers legend. There have been no other arrests connected to the case, but surveillance video showed at least 2 other people present when the statue was cut from its stand, leaving the bronze replicas of Robinson's cleats behind. Part of the statue was later found charred from a fire in another park 7 miles away. Police maintain they don't believe the crime to be racially motivated, but instead by financial gain of scrapping common metal. A new statue has been unveiled at Wichita's McAdams Park, where League 42 plays its games. Major League Baseball paid for the statue's replacement. You know, on the base paths, it was okay and thrilling for Jackie Robinson to steal, but it's not okay to steal Jackie Robinson.
And the fans will never forget the sight of Jackie Robinson hurrying for the plate on his daring steal.
Anyway, let's get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? If you need your gardening done in a hurry, then mechanic Dylan Phillips is your man to call. In June, he set a Guinness World Record for the fastest wheelbarrow after he clocked speeds of 84 kilometers per hour or 52 miles per hour during Straightliners Speed Week 2024 at Elvington Airfield in Yorkshire, in the UK. Dylan joins us via Zoom right now from Pembrokeshire in the United Kingdom. Hi, Dylan.
Hi, Peter. How are you?
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for being on the program with us. So I saw this story back in June, and I saw pictures of you racing around in this wheelbarrow. So the obvious first question is, first of all, kudos to you for the Guinness Book of Records, but why? How did this come about?
Well, it was initially built as a fun project. I had no idea about Guinness World Records or land speed records or anything like that when I first started this thing. It was built entirely for fun, and I went to a builder's merchant, bought myself a wheelbarrow, and I had a scrap scooter, and ended up throwing things together and had a quick go on it, and managed to get speeds of about 37 miles an hour. And that's when the question was asked by a couple of friends, was there a Guinness World Record for the world's fastest motorized wheelbarrow? And turns out there was. So that's where we went with it.
Okay, so again, I go back to the initial question. You're a mechanic. Have you ever thought of doing something like this, either with a wheelbarrow or other motorized situations besides this? Or was this just an aha moment for you, where you woke up one day and said, this is what I'm going to do?
Well, I hope no one wakes up thinking I'm going to strap an engine to a wheelbarrow. But yeah, it was. I've always built slightly mad things. I've got a custom motorbike with a cement mixer engine on it, which was built a couple of years ago. That gets a fair bit of attention. And then yeah, it's just one of those things with the wheelbarrow where this idea sort of came to me, and then grew and grew, and eventually you can't let an idea like that go, can you? You have to follow it through.
Now, I've seen pictures, as I said, of you on this wheelbarrow, and I'm just wondering, are you in complete control of this, or are you just literally holding on for dear life?
I would like to say I've got some control over it. It's not too bad under power when you're going along with it. When you're actually doing the speed runs, it's not too bad. It's fairly stable. It's front wheel drive, so it just drags you along basically. But the problem comes when you try and slow it down. You've only got brakes on the front, and it does get a little bit wobbly. So it's definitely interesting. The fastest run that I had was 56 miles an hour out of the two runs that you have to do to get the average speed, and slowing down from 56 was quite interesting, we'll put it that way.
Okay, so how long of a distance do you figure you had to slow this thing down to finally come to a stop?
Well, luckily, with Straightliner Speed Week being designed for people who are doing well over 200 miles an hour, you've got a mile and a half to slow down. So slowing down from 56 is, you can slow down as slowly as you want, really. And basically that's what you do, is you just coast to a stop rather than trying to bring it to a stop quickly.
Okay, so between the time period when you first did say 30 some odd miles per hour, and your friends decided to asked what's the fastest, between that time and the time you actually completed the record, what was the process for you to A, get the wheelbarrow up to speed, and B, contact the folks at Guinness to see if this could be an entry?
So it actually, well, the process itself took about 2 years from me thinking, oh yeah, why don't we go for this record, and then me actually doing it. But a lot of that was work, real life, money, all of those things get in the way. So you have to prioritize things. But basically, to run with the Straightliners Club, anything that you build has to meet a certain safety requirement. So the wheelbarrow had to go back into the workshop and be basically just checked over, rebuilt. Anything that wasn't up to their safety specs had to be rebuilt to their safety specs. There's a lot of lock wiring, there's a lot of safety paint marks and that sort of thing, just so that the scrutineers can check that everything is tight, everything is as safe as it can be on a motorized wheelbarrow. And from there, it was a case of once I knew that they were happy with the design, I had to make sure that Guinness were happy with the design, that it was still a wheelbarrow in Guinness's eyes. And then you make your attempt and you send all of that evidence off to Guinness, who then decide whether you get the record or not.
Now that you have the record, are you considering the idea of trying to beat your own record, or are you thinking of other things to motorize?
Well, I'm quite happy at the moment just to sit on this and ride this wave for as long as it carries me. It's been a really nice opportunity. I've been invited to some really nice events like Prescott Bike Festival and a couple of other charity events. So it's been really nice just to get out there, see people, raise some, help raise money for some really good causes, and then just get out and see a bit of the country from what was a really idiotic project. Let's face it. I don't think I would try and beat my own record. I would be perfectly happy, though. I would be over the moon if someone broke my record, because that's when I think it would be nice to, maybe revisit the project and see whether we could get something else out of it.
I said you were a mechanic. Were you one of those kids who always tinkered?
Oh, definitely. It was all Meccano and Lego Technic, and maybe I should take this opportunity to apologise to my parents for taking apart the cordless phone and then not being able to put it back together. It's just one of those, like, I've always been into stuff that works and stuff that moves, and it doesn't really matter what it is, whether it's tractors or cars or bikes or wheelbarrows now, obviously. It's just anything mechanical, really.
What is your particular discipline as a mechanic? What do you do on a day-to-day basis as a job?
It's trailer mechanics mainly. I've got my own business doing trailer mechanics, and so it's trailer servicing and repairs. But then a good half of my workshop, I would say, is dedicated to my own little project and my own stuff. So I try and get that work-life balance going.
You mentioned apologizing to your parents about taking apart the phone. When family members come to you and you say, I'm going to do this wheelbarrow, this motorized wheelbarrow, do they just simply think, oh, well, this is a great idea, Dylan? Or is it another case of, oh, Dylan's at it again?
I think it's definitely the latter. It's just there's a bit of eye rolling goes on, and it's like, oh, he's on one, basically. So yeah, that's it's to be fair, my family are very supportive of all of the nonsense that I get up to. So, and I'd like to thank all of them for helping me to realize this and actually being supportive of what is, let's face it, something quite stupid.
I'll say, okay, so besides taking apart the phone as a child and also this wheelbarrow, what have you done on your own in between that? Any kind of wacky, crazy things that you created?
Well, I've done a lot of restoration work and that sort of thing. And it's, as I say, the project before the wheelbarrow was a custom motorbike with a cement mixer engine in it, which that was one that was built just because I had an engine lying around and I had some bits lying around. So it's always nice to just build stuff with what you've got. And then I think this sort of project always it can bring together all of the skills that you've got. There's a lot of problem solving involved. There's a lot of the welding, the painting, all of the engineering that goes into it. It doesn't really matter what the project is, so long as I'm doing what I feel is a fairly tidy job of it. I'm quite happy, really.
So you're the mechanical version of MacGyver.
Well, I think MacGyver would be better in a crisis than I am, to be honest. I mean, he can make I need a good scrap pile to get something going, whereas he can just, knock some rocks together and make do. So I reckon MacGyver's your man, but if MacGyver's busy or something, you could possibly give me a call. We'll see.
Now, I'm all the way here in Canada. You're in the UK. What kind of international media attention have you garnered since you did this back in June?
Well, when when the news story broke on the BBC, it's really I had phone calls from all directions for a couple of days, and it was a bit surreal, really. I never expected it to blow up into what it did. The furthest away I've had was there was a quiz show in Australia wanted me to pre-record a little video question and answer, and then there's been a fair bit of interest from the US because the US has got quite a good following of mechanical nonsense, racing things that shouldn't be raced and that sort of thing. And basically, if it makes a noise, they love it. So yeah, the US has been really supportive. And then yeah, it's just amazing to see how popular this thing was. And I think there's a lot of bad news going around at the moment, and to have something which is completely out of the ordinary, completely just nonsense, that's what people need sometimes.
Absolutely. And congratulations on your record. May it last forever. And if it doesn't, you'll beat it again, I'm sure. Dylan, thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us. It's much appreciated.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Peter.
Mechanic Dylan Phillips, who holds the Guinness World Record for the fastest wheelbarrow in the world. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like. But the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/The Stuff File program.
Malik here. Wow! Listen to this really happening liner music. That's radio jargon. I'm hip to the room. While I bust to move and get down with my bad self, let me tell you, you're listening to Peter Anthony Holder, the hippest dude in the crib. Yo, rap unk.
And still to come on the program, we'll talk to an educator and a YouTuber who has over 1 million subscribers. Plus, Marc Hartzman from WeirdHistorian.com is back with a weird story for the month of August. This one deals with magic and the CIA. And, of course, we will have an Idiot of the Day coming your way a little later on, plus much more in Stuff File News right here, right now. 65-year-old Kathleen Hagen has been banned from the Ocala, Florida Walmart. She also had an active warrant for her arrest for failing to appear to face petty theft charges. When she showed up in that Walmart, employees recognized her and called the Marion County Sheriff's Office, and she was arrested. Hagen, deputies said, admitted to them she knew she wasn't allowed in the store, but claimed she didn't think she would be caught, and that Walmart has the specific pack of Diet Pepsi she likes.
There's never a wrong time to enjoy a nice cold Diet Pepsi.
Oh, I beg to differ. She's being held in jail without bond, and it would be ironic if in there they only serve Diet Coke.
It's the Diet Cola.
On July 31st, police responded to a fire in the early morning hours at a U-Haul business in Roseburg, Oregon. One van was fully engulfed in flames, and the fire was spreading to a second vehicle. Security footage from the area identified 47-year-old Jennifer Denise Holmes, whose van with Nana's sweet treats on the side could be seen in the area. When officers spoke with Holmes, she admitted to siphoning gas from the U-Haul and then lighting a cigarette. She was charged on August the 3rd with first-degree criminal mischief and reckless burning. You know, while it's been eons since mankind discovered fire, there are some people who still aren't fully cognizant of the consequences. Yeah. After CrowdStrike released a software update that knocked out millions of computers, interrupting work and travel around the globe, the company decided to thank some of the people for whom this made additional work. The company said in an email, "To express our gratitude, your next cup of coffee or late-night snack is on us." It provided codes for $10 of Uber Eats credit. Wrote one Redditor, "I literally wanted to drive my car off a bridge this weekend, and they bought me coffee? Nice." That was just one example of the backlash, but some people did use the vouchers. So many, CrowdStrike said, that Uber flagged it as a fraud, and many of the gift codes were blocked. Remember, folks, security software makes computers more reliable, at least in theory. Speaking of wanting to drive a car off a bridge, we're not told exactly how fast a Tesla driver from St. Petersburg, Florida was going, only that he was traveling at a high rate of speed. And what the Florida Highway Patrol says happened on Interstate 275 when his control of the vehicle slipped. First, of course, he went onto the shoulder, but then he encountered a pond. The Tesla turned over, ending up among some mangroves without its driver. He was launched the rest of the way from the road to the Gulf of Mexico, from which he was retrieved by a boater who happened to be nearby. The boater took the seriously injured man to a ramp from which he was transported, presumably by more conventional means, to a hospital. The driver had failed to use one of Tesla's most important safety features, a seatbelt. And now he's paying a price that makes a Tesla look cheap. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, a business in Tampa called the Hillsborough County, Florida Sheriff's Office to report that an ex-employee came by to complain about his final paycheck. He claimed he was shorted by $75 and, to drive the point home, pulled a gun on the manager and said he was going to kill everyone at the business. He then apparently changed his mind and left. It wasn't reported if he got his $75, but because the man was a former employee, the manager was able to identify him and provided his address in nearby Ruskin. 39-year-old Tito Evan Lloyd was found in Ruskin and arrested, charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, being a felon and carrying a concealed weapon, and being a felon in possession of a firearm. Yeah, I hope while he's in prison he will have someone invest that $75 wisely. That's assuming he got it. Perhaps someone in prison will pull him aside and give him financial advice.
Just one word.
Yes, sir.
Are you listening?
Yes, I am.
Plastics.
Exactly how do you mean?
There's a great future in plastics. Think about it. Will you think about it?
Yes, I will.
Enough said. That's a deal.
It would be a nice nest egg when he finally gets out. Anyway, let's get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? Jennifer Lebedev is a YouTube star. Her YouTube page, English with Jennifer, has over 1 million subscribers. Jennifer is a longtime educator and author of the book, Being a YouTuber, One Creator's Bumpy Road to 1 Million Subscribers. She joins us via Zoom from Massachusetts. Hi, Jennifer.
Hey, Peter, how are you?
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for being on the program with us. So when did you first decide to go onto YouTube and why?
Well, telling the year reveals my age, but I'm okay with that. I started in 2007 when YouTube was just taking off. And I came from the classroom and I had been doing classroom teaching. And then I stepped out to take on a book contract to write a textbook. And by 2007, I was a mom of 2. And I didn't see an easy way for me to go back to full-time teaching and handling the commute. And luckily, YouTube was just taking off around that time. time, and it was suggested, hey, why don't you post some videos and see what happens? And I did. And it was really wonderful because I had no clue about video making or editing. And I just did my best by clicking record, hoping I wouldn't mess up for 10 minutes, and then uploading that video. And I wanted to see what the response was. And thankfully, it was very positive. And I was just very grateful that from the get-go, people were receptive to teaching. This is, way before COVID, and it was so new, and it was just something done as an experiment, and thankfully it was received very well, and it encouraged me to continue.
So when you first started, how did you get the word out? Did you reach out to friends? Did you reach out to other teachers? Or did it just go viral on its own?
Well, I don't know if viral was the term back then, but I did show a few people saying, hey, look what I'm doing here. I showed a couple colleagues. But from the beginning, Peter, there were not just learners watching, there were other teachers and professors watching, because up until YouTube, we didn't have a chance to see each other do what we do so much. We have classroom observations as part of our training, but it was exciting to watch other teachers do what we do, teach. And so I had other teachers, especially from other countries, who they themselves were language learners. So they were watching me to see what I do, how I do it, how I introduce topics, how I explain them, the kinds of activities I take learners through. So I had support from my colleagues from the beginning.
So how different are the videos that you're putting on now, or certainly the videos that were putting on when you reached 1 million subscribers? How different were those videos from what you were putting on when you first started? Or are they the same?
They are different. I hope everyone sees the quality. And the fact that I said to people, if you stick with me, I will learn to be a better video maker. And I think I've kept that promise. I still need to learn more, and I'm open to learning. But at the beginning, I didn't even own a tripod. I wasn't ready to invest in equipment. I just turned all the lights on, hoped for the best, and pressed the record button. I was balancing the camera on bookshelves and cereal boxes. I learned how to edit eventually, and as time went on, I gained skill. So what I do now is definitely different, even how I approach it. The long form videos are basically scripted. I can deviate, but there's more planning that goes into it. And then after filming, editing takes quite some time. There's a lot of time that goes into editing and production.
Okay, so we'll talk about the success in a bit, and also your book, which is called Being a YouTuber. Let's talk a little bit about what the actual videos you're making are and how you came up with the idea of wanting to do this on a mass scale.
It was a desire to teach. I wasn't in the classroom anymore, and I had this desire still to share what I know. I knew it would be useful to somebody, and I decided to use YouTube as my platform. I think that's what everyone was doing at the beginning. There was no hint of monetization back then, so everyone was just sharing what they thought would be of value in some way, whether it was entertaining or educational. We're just posting our videos, and that was my primary motivation. So what I'm posting right now are tutorials. They're language videos for people learning English at different levels. And I've experimented quite a lot, Peter. I've done everything from having actual students on camera to me going out and about and showing, like I went to the dentist's office once, or mostly I film in my home though. I usually address topics that either students ask for or that I've identified based on what I'm hearing and seeing, and I see a need and I came up with the topic, and then I publish my videos. I always try to inject a little bit of my life though into it, because I think it's important to connect with the audience and provide a context for the language.
People are often saying that English is a living language. It's just that some people aren't necessarily happy with where it lives. But how do you feel about the English language and the way it's used? And does that affect the way you teach it?
Yes, and I think I've shifted over the years because, when you first start teaching, you start becoming aware of how our language works. Otherwise, as a native speaker, you don't question the patterns that you grew up with. But when you actually have to teach it, you have to explain, and you have learners asking, "But why?" And you have to think of why do we do this? Why is the pattern that way? Whether we're talking about pronunciation or spelling or grammar, words, the nuances of words that they ask you about. But I will say that there is a way to to see grammar, for example. There's like the textbook way and the dictionary way saying you must do it this way. And then there's what you actually hear. And so I've shifted away from that so-called prescriptive grammar and embraced more of the descriptive grammar, meaning I see what people are doing, I hear what they're saying, and if that's, what's going to make people sound more natural, I teach those patterns. And I think I was more hesitant in my early career as a teacher in general to show all the variations, especially the ones that were labeled non-standard or too informal. But, I think views are shifting in general, and I've shifted too. I'm open to variation, flexibility. I do still believe in the value of more standard patterns, but what makes people sound natural is what's going to help them function best.
So when and why did you write the book, Being a YouTuber, One Creator's Bumpy Road to 1 Million Subscribers?
2022 was a big year. So I did hit the big 50. I turned 50, and prior to that, I would always hide my age. But I hit 50, and then actually 1 month before is when I hit the 1 million mark. So there was cause for celebration. Of course, I felt gratitude hitting that marker and wanting to celebrate with my subscribers, my viewers. But I was also going through a lot of personal transition. So family demographics changed and the dynamics, and then we sold a house, bought a house, renovated a house. And so much was shifting that I just really needed to take stock of where I was and how I wanted to proceed. Because I was very tired in many ways, mentally, emotionally. I knew I wanted to continue, but I asked myself, how? Could I really do it in the same way that I had been doing it since 2007? And I really wanted to think about, am I doing things as best I can? What needs to change? I love what I do. I love teaching, but I can't say that I was always happy along the path. And I've struggled in different ways, especially with my health. And I thought, you need to take a snapshot, look at what you're doing, and ask yourself what needs to change so that you can have a happier, healthier, more sustainable online career. And so the book was really a reflection. And I also felt like it was an opportunity for me to add my voice to a larger conversation, because people often ask, well, what is it like to be a YouTuber? How do you do this? Like, how do you get subscribers? How do you get followers? But not many people were opening up about the how do you feel? And what is it like personally? What are the struggles that people don't show? We all see the smiling snapshots and the happy thumbnails, but what about the struggles? What about the doubts? Did you ever want to quit? And I decided to open up about that and at least share my story so that people could hear what at least one creator has experienced on the road to 1 million.
When you started writing the book, who did you envision would be the reader of your book? Who were you going after?
Not my own students necessarily, although some of the advanced ones will read it and to learn more about it. But it was really anybody, mostly creators, but even beyond that, anybody who is struggling to define success and wondering, are they successful? Am I doing enough? Am I doing it well? All those questions about self-doubt. I wanted people to know that I've asked those questions too, and I still struggle with some of them, but I feel on much firmer ground right now, having asked them and having searched for and found some of those answers. I want other people to know that it's okay and you're not alone. And there can be a process of going through those questions and coming out on the other end all the better for it. And so now I feel it's important for people to hear, especially from YouTube, a YouTuber where, numbers are in our face every single day. And I do believe in the value of all the analytics and looking at numbers. At the same time, I refuse to let the numbers define me and my success alone. I believe in looking beyond the numbers to really define what success and happiness is, online and offline.
Well, congratulations on your success. The book is called Being a YouTuber, One Creator's Bumpy Road to 1 Million Subscribers. Your YouTube page is English with Jennifer. How often do you put out a new video for your YouTube page?
I put out there's a live stream each month and there's a long form video once or twice a month. And I've really increased the number of shorts because those are much easier to produce.
Well, congratulations again on your success. And thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Educator Jennifer Lebedev. Her YouTube page is English with Jennifer, and her book is Being a YouTuber, One Creator's Bumpy Road to 1 Million Subscribers. You can go to our website at thestuffile.com to the page for this show, which is show number 0782, and you'll find links to her site plus links to either amazon.com or amazon.ca where you can order her book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestuffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestuffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Hey, how would you like to become a patron of the Stuff File program? It's easy to do. By going to patreon.com and becoming a patron, you help to make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. And if you become a regular patron, as a Patreon reward, I'll share with you an electronic version of my book, Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. You've heard me say on many occasions about the myriad of celebrities I've had the chance to talk to that are contained in my book, which is published by Bear Manor Media. You've also heard me mention that some of the celebrities in my book, and many others, can be heard on our page at patreon.com. If you've been on the fence about joining Patreon, let me try to pull you over to our side. Join Patreon and claim your copy of Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. Sign up at patreon.com/The Stuff File program.
You're listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. Batteries not included, some assembly required.
And still to come in the program, we'll hear from Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com, with the weird story for the month of August. We also have an Idiot of the Day coming your way a little later on, but I've got one more Stuff File news story to share with you right here, right now. A school in Texas has changed its dress code to forbid black tops with black bottoms, citing concerns about mental health and criminality. The principal of Charles Middle School in El Paso, Nick DeSantis, wrote in a letter to parents that an all-dark ensemble can be associated with depression and mental health issues and/or criminality. The school said in a letter, eliminating a look that has taken over on campus with students wearing black tops with black bottoms, which has become more associated with depression and mental health issues and/or criminality than with happy and healthy kids ready to learn. Sarah Venegas, executive principal at the El Paso Independent School District, said, the school allowed black pants last year, but going forward, students will only be allowed to wear khaki pants and blue jeans. Meanwhile, the president of the El Paso Teachers Association, Norma De La Rosa, noted that children could wear black shorts in gym class or on Civies days, but also admitted that the colors are not much to prevent or stop mental health issues. You can have the most colorful dress on and still be suffering through depression. Many parents agreed in a poll about the new dress code, with one dad commenting, the color of clothing has nothing to do with your ability to do anything or feel any emotion. Another parent wrote, making students wear a different color isn't going to magically make them a completely different person. Well, even those who think that black clothing is a sign of a depressed person, here's a thought. Find out why they're depressed. I mean, it's not a cause, if you believe that. It's a symptom. Anyway, let's get to our next guest, our last guest here in this edition of the Stuff All program, shall we? Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com, is back with a weird story for the month of August. This one deals with the combination of magic and the CIA. Marc joins us via Skype from New York, and Marc, magic and the CIA is not like peanut butter and chocolate. They are not two great tastes that taste great together, although full disclosure, I don't like peanut butter, and I hate Reese's peanut butter cups.
Oh, I love them. One of my favorites. But yeah, this was definitely an odd combination, which led to some interesting times in the 1950s. So this story, actually, the reason we're doing this for August is this story came to light at a Senate Intelligence Committee hearing in August of 1977. And this was 7 years after the passing of a magician named John Mulholland. And John Mulholland was a very famous magician who spent decades mastering the art of sleight of hand, studied under all kinds of famous magicians. He was the editor of a very popular magicians magazine called The Sphinx. And in 1953, he was approached by a man named Sidney Gottlieb, who was working with the CIA. And Sidney Gottlieb was running a very, very secretive program called MK Ultra. And MK Ultra was the CIA's attempt to figure out how to perform mind control. And the reason they wanted to perform mind control was because they were afraid that the Soviets were figuring out mind control. And this was, the Cold War was off and running at this point. And if the Soviets were going to have mind control powers, the CIA definitely wanted to have mind control powers. And so Sidney Gottlieb was looking for all kinds of different ways to find some sort of way to use drugs or chemicals or whatever it might be to affect the brain in such a way that they could be controlled to do whatever they needed. So you can imagine what could come from that. So that led to this idea of how do we potentially slip drugs into a target's drink, for example, or find ways to, get to our targets and control them with a particular drug that might work. So to do that, Sidney Gottlieb had set up a whole bunch of different sub-projects under MK Ultra. One of them was sub-project number 4. And sub-project 4 was to enlist this magician, John Mulholland, and figure out how to use his sleight of hand techniques to then slip these drugs into targets' drinks. So basically, how to spike someone's drink and then control their minds. That's kind of the idea here. So he wanted Mulholland to basically write a manual of how to do these kinds of things. And so he did this manual. He called it Some Operational Applications of the Art of Deception. And this was, as he described it, filled with descriptions of, quote, simple mechanical aids, how to make them and how to carry them about. This was great. He was getting paid $3,000 at this point for this initial document to put together. And Gottlieb was excited and thought this would be really helpful with their project of how to get their mind control project, off and running successfully. This whole thing to me was like James Bond with, a little bit of a Mulholland makeover happening.
It's interesting because they were asking him to write some sort of journal, some sort of technical guidebook as to how to do this. Generally speaking, aren't magicians usually avoiding the idea of giving away tricks?
Well, yeah, but this was meant just for the CIA. This wasn't meant for everybody else. And he was always very careful with the language he used as well, just in case it did get out of the hands of the CIA. He didn't want it to appear to be like a book for the CIA. You know what I mean? So by that, he would use different kinds of language. So he wouldn't say, he wouldn't use the word agents or targets or marks or anyone like that. He would say words like trick. And a trick would be for like a covert action, for example. And a reader would be for the agent. And a spectator would be the target. So he used this, deceptive language on how agents could deceive their targets, basically. And that would then, make sure that any other readers who may have gotten their hands on it wouldn't know exactly what it was. Although they may have questioned why this magician was writing a guide for how to sneak pills into people's drinks, because that's not your typical magic trick. How to drug someone isn't usually in your magic show. But that's kind of what this guide was. And so he would do, the booklet's got all kinds of different tricks in it. But for example, one of them talks about how to use a little pin attached to a matchbook. So back again, this is 1953 and, in through the 50s. And so that's the time when everybody smoked, so it was very common to pull out a matchbook and offer to light someone's cigarette. So he would have a little pin. He talked about how to conceal a pin that could then hold a pill beneath it. And so as you're going to do that action of lighting a match, you could just slip your finger from that pin and position it over a cup and very surreptitiously drop the pill right into the drink as you're lighting the cigarette, and no one would ever notice. So these were the kinds of little things that he was doing, and talking about other details about how to have a proper expression on your face. Don't look too happy. Don't look too dull. He said, this was a quote, he said, assuming a mildly stupid appearance during a trick will give away the appearance of disinterest. So again, you have to have like just the right kind of look on your face. So again, you're not giving anything away. This is obviously the kind of thing magicians have to be careful with always, with their facial expressions and their movements and misdirection, all these kinds of things. So he was basically teaching these agents how to perform these different kinds of sleight of hand techniques to drug their targets. As this went on, this first edition was mostly for male agents, and then Gottlieb had him write a separate one also to include female agents. And so then he kind of adopted different techniques that make more sense for a woman at the time, things like using a pocket mirror and how she can use that to, again, slip something into someone's drink. So all these different kinds of different tricks he would teach them. And then even a guide to like signaling each other with the way you might tie your shoes, a different shoe pattern with the laces that might signal from one agent to another so they could communicate quietly to each other. So again, different ways that they could use sleight of hand techniques and sort of magic techniques to communicate with each other potentially on the job.
So I guess penny loafers were out. But having said all this...
the kind of penny you put in there, maybe? Which
okay.
side?
Okay.
Upside down?
Having said all this, what was the outcome? Was it successful in any way, shape, or form? Or it was just something else that the CIA puts in a storage room someplace and occasionally dusts off?
Well, I would say that from what I gathered going through tons of documents from this time, Gottlieb seemed happy with the work that Mulholland provided. I'm sure Mulholland was kind of excited by the thrill of working with the CIA, but the bigger picture was not successful, which was mind control. MK Ultra did not work ultimately. Beyond this particular story with John Mulholland, that they were trying all sorts of other things with LSD and all kinds of other weird programs. We never mastered mind control. That never happened. But they sure put a lot of effort into it and a lot of money and a lot of time.
Well,
and, this is one of those weird stories to do it.
We often talk about, we always talk about weird stories and weird moments in history. But I have to tip my hat to Sidney Gottlieb because, obviously he was given a mission and he had to follow through on the mission. And in thinking about this mission, he thought outside the box, which I thought it was very impressive on his part. It didn't necessarily work, but the idea of his thinking process in hoping that it might work, kudos to him.
Yeah, he left no stone unturned, as was pretty common with the CIA with all their missions, particularly at that time, looking for all kinds of different solutions. And this guy was a master of poisons, and he really studied different ways to use drugs and how they could affect the mind. Some of it's very dark. The way he was testing this on people wasn't exactly great. There were lots of pretty horrible ways he was testing these drugs on different kinds of people, including his own agents. There were times at the CIA where, and this was in a particular group, by the way. It's not like the whole CIA knew about this. MK Ultra was very secretive within the CIA. But within his own group at Fort Detrick, he was dropping, LSD was getting dropped in people's drinks left and right, seeing how people would react in the office, So this was like another day at work, was just, I might be taking some LSD and have no idea until later.
Please tell me that Sidney Gottlieb's tombstone has Masters of Poison on it. I really do.
Sure, he was a very interesting character. He also loved folk dancing. It was a very bizarre character outside of work. He was very different outside of the poison game when he was back home. But yeah, this was I thought just a fascinating little mix of magic and the CIA that happened in the 50s, and again didn't come to light until August 1977.
And as always, it's a joy and a thrill to have you on the program to share a weird story for a particular month. And I thank you once again, sir, for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you. This is a story that will be, just to quickly plug, my next book, which is called You're Not Supposed to Know About This.
Ooh.
And that will be coming out in just over a year.
We'll definitely have to have you on to talk about that book when it comes out as well.
Oh, yes, please. Lots more in there, for sure.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com and also the publisher at CuriousPublications.com. He's the author of several books, his most recent one being We Are Not Alone, The Extraordinary History of UFOs and Aliens Invading Our Hopes, Fears, and Fantasies. You can go to our website at thestuffwall.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0782, and you'll find the links to Mark's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his books directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. And boys and girls, it's that moment you've all been waiting for. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. The Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
If you would prefer the police not find your bag of drugs, perhaps consider placing the illegal narcotics into something other than a container marked bag of drugs. 41-year-old Lauren Riley was a passenger in a car pulled over in Florida after the driver was spotted without a seatbelt. During the traffic stop, officers noticed Riley moving items around on the vehicle's floorboard. When police peered into the auto, they allegedly spotted drug paraphernalia, which prompted a probable cause examination of the vehicle and its contents. The resulting search turned up a bag inside Riley's purse labeled bag of drugs. Inside the bag, cops allege, was a needle, straws, a metal spoon, 4 glass pipes, and plastic baggies with white-colored residue. A bag inside the drugs bag contained crack cocaine, powdered cocaine, crystal meth, Xanax pills, and other narcotics. What? She was out doing some kind of weird trick-or-treating? Yeah. Anyway, the discovery of the bag of drugs resulted in Riley's arrest on a variety of felony charges and a misdemeanor paraphernalia count. Riley is being held in a Florida county lockup. Her bag of drugs is being held in a police evidence locker. The question is a moot point, but, this is the Stuff File program, so I have to ask it. Why, oh why, would you carry around in public a virtual medicine cabinet of illegal and illicit drugs in a container labeled bag of drugs? One reason, and one reason only. You're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0782. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestufffile.com, and once again, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0782. Email me at peter@thestufffile.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Spoutable, Mastodon, and Blue Sky as PA Holder. Check us out on patreon.com, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including KDXRadio.com, over the air on World FM in New Zealand, WLSL-LP-FM in Dade City, Florida, KZZH-LP-FM in Eureka, California, CKUW-FM in Winnipeg, CFMU in Hamilton, CKLU in Sudbury, Local 107.3 FM in St. John, CHSR in Fredericton, CFQR 600 in Montreal, and also streaming on just about any streaming service your little heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. Well, you weren't literally with him. Well, maybe you were, but I don't see how. I mean, he does record these in advance, and... Okay, maybe you did listen with him. Who am I to call you a liar? And personally, I've never met the guy, and I'm not in a hurry to either.